The title of the paper that I am presenting today is Dalit Literature and the Caste System, Criminals and Slaves in Dalit Literature. Introduction. Dalit as a word from Sanskrit means oppressed. The term is used to refer to the scheduled caste people who used to be referred to as untouchables or Harijans. This paper will use a caste theoretical framework by Halimah 2016, titled The Story of Caste Old and New, to read the Dalit text. It will also look at the concept of the criminal and psychology to look at why Dalits are presented as criminals in many Dalit literatures. We'll look at the relationship between the ancestral status of a Dalit in society to determine the position of Dalits as criminals in literature. Mahatma Gandhi abhorred the status of the Dalit and the caste practices in India. To him, all human beings were equal. This paper sets out to discuss and argue that the status of a Dalit has been accorded to him according to the laws of the Vedas, because men and women became Dalits due to crimes that they committed and were dealt with using religious laws. This research aims to discuss and analyze Dalit literature, a literature by and on the peripheral Dalit caste in India. This research sets out to discuss and argue that the status of a Dalit has been accorded to him according to the laws of the Vedas, because men and women became Dalits due to crimes that they committed and were dealt with using religious laws. In modern-day linguistic terms, the Dalit would simply be referred to as a criminal or transgressor in his or her society. This research will employ the short story of G. Nirmala Rani, titled Acquisition, to discuss this issue of the Dalit as a criminal or transgressor, as presented in Dalit literature and other texts written by Dalit authors and Indian authors in English or in translation. It will discuss the findings from a postcolonial lens. The caste system. This section will discuss the history of the caste system, the ideology that supports it, and its divisions that have been deliberated by Halimah 2016 in her essay The Story of Caste Old and New. Muhammad Ali elucidates why the age-old system is still practiced in India. She also discusses its development since its introduction by the Aryans in 1500 BC. Sociologists have copiously written about caste practices in India and the caste system. According to Arsala Sharma 1999, that active research on the caste system was deliberated by the colonialists in order to understand the multifaceted and multi-layered caste system that controlled the way of life of the Indian society. The research on caste that was propagated by the British colonizers was also a means used to strengthen their hold on India. The caste system is an intricate practice of classifying groups of people in the Indian subcontinent. Thus, racial categories in India are not easily determined, nor caste categories due to hybridity. After India's independence in 1947, and caste practices and caste-based discriminations being outlawed, it has become very difficult to identify the Indians and the Hindus through the caste system. In 1966, when historians like Tapar were actively researching the caste system due to political-driven reasons, it was determined that the system was very controversial. Dalit literature and theory. There's been much written on Dalit literature. Nicole Tiara's 2016 research discusses 3 Dalit novels that have been written for national and international audience which have caste themes in them. These novels, according to Tiara, are experimental and have made attempts to reproduce oral narrative structures that reflect the Dalits as a communal group that criticizes the caste system and invokes an independence from the orthodox doctrines of the system. The key activist that has propounded Dalit themes and literature is Arundhati Roy, the 1997 Man Booker Prize winner for her debut novel, The God of Small Things. The prize from the Booker was donated by Roy to the Dalits. Due to Roy's active participation in the Dalit community, the Dalits have had extensive media exposure. Halimah Ali, the author of Orientalism from Within, Arundhati Roy and her contemporaries, 2011, in a lecture at the Osmania University in Hyderabad, India in 2015, said that The God of Small Things 1997 triggered fresh dialogue on the caste system, and that mainly due to this fact, Roy is a force to be respected. Jawahar Aniket, 2012, Dalit Literature, in the preface of this book, discusses the ideas of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar too. He labels Dalit literature as destitute literature that represents the downtrodden Dalits who in their essence are born into poverty and destitution. Under caste laws, the Dalits cannot upgrade themselves either socially or economically due to religious constraints that have been discussed in the above section on the caste system. He discusses identity politics that had been actively pursued by India's freedom fighters. After Salman Rushdie's Man Booker Prize success in 1988, with his novel Midnight's Children, discourse on identity politics became fashionable again in India. Thus, the international audience too actively pursued Indian English fictions that had identity political themes in them. Many vernacular language novels were translated into English by publishers like Macmillan's India. Some of the novels are Sacred Crow 1996 by Victor Anand, that was originally written in English, published in India and then in Australia, while Gandatima, English translation of Sri Krishna Alana Hali's novel Parasan Gada Gandatima from its original language Kannada, also discusses castial politics. Textual analysis. This section analyzes G. Nirmala Rani's short story Acquisition that has been published in the collection of Dalit women's writing titled Flowering from the Soil by K. Sunita Rani as the editor. Nirmala Rani began to write when she was in college. She is a social activist. She writes in Telugu. Her favorite subjects are caste, class, and gender. She lives in an area that is backward and where humans suffer due to poverty. This has contributed to her writings. Her short stories in the collection titled Gajukalu 2003 have contributed remarkably to Dalit literature. Thus, this section looks at two of them and how they portray the themes of poverty and crime in connection with the Dalits. Acquisition is about a man named Sinappa and his wife, Santama. They are well-to-do citizens in a village, and they sometimes fed poor children in exchange for work. The children normally clean the house and courtyard for Santama and sometimes her neighbors. Other than food, the children were given 50 paise for their work. However, the children are one day arrested and tortured because Santama says that they robbed her house. Sinappa refuses to believe that the children are guilty. However, Sinappa is controlled by his wife. Her word has to be obeyed because her family is rich and controls Sinappa's occupation and finances. Thus, Sinappa does not have the power to defend the children or question their innocence. The policeman that is handling the case is related to his wife. The children, especially Abalesu, cry out their innocence. They beg for mercy but are ignored. The child convicts are taken to the police station even when they plead their innocence. However, the narrative says that the people in the village knew the children and insinuate their innocence. They wholeheartedly believe that the children are innocent. The villagers are afraid of their own safety and do not want to go to jail because Santama is very powerful. She is related to the constable. The same fate that has befallen the children might become theirs. so the villagers refrain from defending the rights of the children. Sinapa is portrayed to be different from his wife in the fiction. The way that Santama controls her husband is shown to us via the narrative. Thus, the fates of the children lie in her hands. Sinapa and the villagers become helpless in front of her because of her wealth and power as well as connections. The children's innocence comes to surface when Sinapa goes into the bathroom. He calls out to his wife and she comes to him. Once she discovers that her husband has found the picture, she asks him to hide the fact. Thus, the fiction narrates Santama's reason for trapping the children. She wanted police protection for her house and wanted the neighbors to fear her because she was leaving her house to go back to her mother's house for confinement. Thus, she set up the children who are poor and powerless. Sinapa is happy to know of the innocence of the children. He tries to free them from police custody. The policeman confesses to Sinapa that he knows of the children's innocence. He also states that Santama has paid him to scare the children and then release them. The whole case is made up by Sinapa's wife to scare her neighbors and for her own benefit. However, the predicament of the eldest child in the group is not over. According to the text, Obalasu, the eldest of the children, is arrested over and over again by the police and questioned for petty crimes. He runs away from police custody and his father is worried. His father goes and finds Sinapa and asks for help. Sinapa becomes worried at the damage that this has done to the family's reputation. He questions as to who is responsible for all this calamity that has befallen the boy and his family. The end of the short story reveals Sinapa's reaction to the atrocities that his wife has committed towards the downtrodden. He lets go of the life that his marriage has given him. He resigns from his position at work and goes out into the world to search for a new job and on a mission to save Obulasu's life. Thus, the fiction shows us that there are characters in India that take advantage of the poor and even children. It is worse in this fiction because the victims are underage children. It shows to us that there are heartless individuals that will harm even children for their own ends. However, humanity wins in the end. When Sinapa decides to leave behind the world that his wife's family gives him for a new life and to save the child's life, humanity wins. Good wins over evil. The narrator shows us that there are humans that are as wicked as Sinapa's wife that destroy others for petty reasons. This research has discussed and analyzed Dalit literature, a literature by and on the peripheral Dalit caste in India. It sets out to discuss and argue that the status of a Dalit has been accorded to him or her according to the laws of the Vedas because men and women became Dalit due to crimes that they committed and were dealt with using religious laws. In modern-day linguistic terms, the Dalit would simply be referred to as a criminal or a transgressor in his or her society. This research has employed the short story of G. Nirmala Rani, titled Acquisition, as an example to discuss this issue of the Dalit as a criminal or transgressor, as presented in Dalit literature and other texts written by Dalit authors and Indian authors in English or in translation. It has discussed the findings from a postcolonial lens. The short story discussed portray to us that there are characters in India that take advantage of the poor and even children. It is a critique of Indian society and of a woman who is a mother. Mothers are supposed to have compassion in them. However, this woman destroys the lives of children because she wants her property safe from thefts when she is away. It shows to us that there are heartless individuals that will harm even children for their own ends. However, humanity wins over evil. Sinapa, her husband, stands for his rights and treats his wife's victims with humanity, and he makes up his mind to save Abulasu from the fate that has befallen him due to his Sinapa's wife. Thank you.